How's it looking from where you're sitting in Brussels?
Well, I suppose at this point, no news, Francine, is good news. The technical teams are still working it out. They need to make the numbers square up, need to make the numbers add up. At a certain point, this will shift into political talks. Draghi is going to be arriving here this afternoon. Juncker, Tsipras, they're all going to be here. And then we'll see how late the evening goes. Everyone is predicting a late night, and by late night, I mean early dawn, and maybe even when the sun is up when we get a deal. That seems to be the vibe here. Now, what everyone wants to see is actual tangibles. The term you'll hear from the European Union, at least from EU officials, in terms of deliverables is prior actions. Now, here's a quote I want to put up for you. It says, "We would like to see these prior actions to be spelled out in the form of a complete list of deliverables." Now, that means you'd have a vote in Athens that would actually codify those, and then you'd have a separate vote in the Bundestag either on the 29th or the 30th. You know, Francine, I suppose if you're looking for signs that things are headed in the right direction, we do have Madame Lagarde, a coordinating person familiar with the matter, telling her board, the IMF board, that she is confident that Greece is going to make that payment. Now, publicly, she's been the one that's been pretty critical. She's talking about the enormous gap. So right now, that is an indication things are heading in the right direction, but it does seem like they have a lot of details to work out, and frankly, we don't have a readout of what's happening in those technical talks just yet. Francine?
Hans, thank you for now. Let's head over to Guy in Athens. Guy, given what Hans has just said, the timeline actually is very tight for Greece.
The timeline's tight, and there are a lot of moving parts here, including, we understand, Mario Draghi's plane, which may or may not have taken off a little bit late, according to some reports, so maybe he'll be a little bit tardy when it comes to the meeting today. The politics absolutely front and centre from a Greek point of view. We spoke to the leader of the left platform within Syriza. He's currently the energy minister, Mr. Panagiotis Lafazanis. He's not a fan, let's put it this way, of what the institutions, the Troika, have done thus far.
The
bailouts destroyed our country. Unfortunately, the European Union, the European Central Bank, and the International Monetary Fund, the so-called institutions, have played a very, very negative role for the country. Because they insist and blackmail us to implement programs which bring recession, destruction, and paralysis.
If he decided to vote against the package, he may take between 10 and 40 MPs with him, and that would cause huge problems for Mr. Tsipras. It may even threaten his government. So there's an awful lot of things still to happen here in Athens when it comes to the political story. And on the matter of whether or not we get that 30th payment to the IMF, well, again, a lot of moving parts here. Do they have the money? Would they need the money from the ECB in the terms of more T-bills? And even if they don't have the money and they miss the payment, does that actually really matter? There's a little bit of flexibility built into the system. So an awful lot of imponderables at this point. But as the day starts to progress, maybe we'll get a little bit more news. As the night works its way through, maybe tomorrow morning we'll actually have some certainty. But even if we get certainty out of Brussels, there's no certainty out of the building behind me, the Greek Parliament, Fran.
Yeah, it's going to be, I guess, a rough couple of hours or even days. Debt restructuring, is it a deal breaker, Guy?
I was inside the Finance Ministry last night. We were talking to the General Secretary. He was talking about the fact that debt restructuring needs to be a concrete part of this process. Whether or not it actually gets kind of formally put into the agreement that we get out of Brussels, I don't know. But the Greeks are saying there needs to be some commitment sort of nailed down at this stage as to some form of debt restructuring. Now, we don't know what kind of debt restructuring that would be, and that, again, is one of the open questions. But the Greeks certainly see this as being part of the transaction that they're about to enter into.